we refuse to exclude anybody. So exclusion is a disaster. They're the next people that end up in jail. So lots of schools find a way to improve their performance by, as I say, selecting in the best and then selecting out the worst. And that's all good for us now.
Now, hello, everybody. I'm Charles Wiles, the founder of the company behind Quizalize and Marbley. And today, as part of our series of discussions with thought leaders in the UK education scene, I'm incredibly fortunate to have the opportunity to talk to David Hoare, who is his early career was as a businessman. He's very, very successful, but his last life career has all been about education. David, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell a little bit more about your history, where you come from, and what why you have this great passion for education today.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for having me on. I'm delighted to do so. If I can provide any insights, I'm delighted to do so, but we'll see how we go. I basically started as an engineer, found that pretty slow going in the UK, went off to America to business school, to Stanford, was very lucky to join a consulting company called Bain & Company, which was as the 12th employee, so really early on, and worked there for 10 years, and then started my own company in 86. So turned from engineering to consulting into sort of entrepreneurialism, and that went pretty well. And then there's sort of three phases of life. You learn, then you earn, and then hopefully you return. And I got to the returning stage about 12 years ago, and thinking about what the fundamental issues facing, particularly the UK, but actually worldwide, education seemed to be the root cause of every single problem we've got. And it seemed to me that we hadn't done enough in that area. I was quite a convert to the Blair years in 1997, where his priorities were education. And so I began to get involved in education with the government, had two eventful years, I think you would say, as chairman of Ofsted, to challenging establishment and authority, and I wanted to try and make fundamental differences in Ofsted, and that was a challenge. And now I'm chairman of 4 deeply deprived schools in Bedford, in the 5% most deprived areas of Britain, and really focused pretty well all my attention, other than as an investor, in trying to improve educational standards in the UK and learn about it. And that's really why I'm really interested in the issues of technology and what technology can do to help, particularly the group that I call the forgotten third. That is the third of the bottom of society who struggle to deliver, struggle to be productive, because frankly, we haven't properly invested and supported them.
So you are the chairman of a trust with a lot of disadvantaged children. And it's something you're incredibly passionate about. We've been talked a few times over the last 6 months. The reality is, I think, is that 25% of all children in the UK are on free school meals. So it's not a small proportion. That's at the bottom quarter, that's at the bottom third. It's a large proportion of children, and a lot of us who come from relatively privileged backgrounds don't really realise how big this issue is with it, and it's a really significant issue. Many children come from these, and they could be because they're just the families just are not very wealthy. But there's also a lot of people, particularly in the city of London, who are asylum seekers who come from families new to the country. I think in your trust, talk about English language and how there's a lot of different languages spoken in its own right. Their first language, a lot of children is English. So, and there's multiple problems. What are some of the biggest challenges in your trust, and how are you trying to overcome them at the moment? What is your strategies and things?
Yeah, we've got 1 secondary, 3 primaries, 85% English as an additional language. In our secondary, we've got 52 different languages. We have immigrants coming in left and right. And the thing to remember, which makes me feel optimistic every day, is these are the immigrants, these are the future. They're absolutely fantastic. You can teach them English and you can get them on the straight and narrow. These are the really productive members of society. The big problem we've got in our country, unfortunately, is fifth generation poor white. That's the really difficult nut to crack. And in our school, the worst performing children, unfortunately, is the poor British white. That even worse than Black Caribbean. So they are absolutely fundamental to what we need to do. We need to teach people English, but we need to deal with the poor British white, and a lot of that is, no family backgrounds, no support, no help. Government has cut the living daylights out of all youth spending in local authorities. They've practically nowhere to go, and not surprisingly, they turn truant. And so we have made massive progress. Really pleased with both our A-level results and our GCSE results. Our schools are full, but teaching is very difficult. It's the most difficult thing I've ever seen in my entire career, having run maybe 20 different businesses. It is an almost impossible job because teachers, they're not just teachers, but they're welfare officers and they're social service people. And the levels of support in the most disadvantaged areas of Britain is, quite frankly, shocking. And more and more money drains out of them. There's less support and they get worse. And then everybody wonders why we've got a problem at the bottom level out here. So I was lucky enough to take over these four schools soon. Hopefully we'll expand it. Government really doesn't understand at all the challenges that there are at the bottom of the economic spectrum. The discipline is the most important thing you've got to get right. You absolutely got to get lower level disruption. Simple things like getting rid of telephones. We got rid of telephones almost instantly. Everybody's got to understand, what good performance looks like and what happens if you don't. We refuse to exclude anybody. So exclusion is a disaster. They're the next people who end up in jail. So lots of schools find a way to improve their performance by, as I say, selecting in the best and then selecting out the worst. And that's all good for us. It may be good for the school, may be good for the head, but it's bad for society. So we've determined essentially not to exclude. And that means you've got a massive amount of work to be able to take kids out of class, rehabilitate them and put them back in again. And it is a long term. We might be there 5 years now, and the job ain't done yet. So it's an incredible challenge, but in my view, in my narrow view, it's the most important thing we need to do.
I was just having a discussion with David Hoare, who used to be the CEO of the ACT Group, and he was saying that in trying to transform the schools, obviously there are a lot of levers pull, but for him the most important one of all was culture. The culture of the not just the teachers and the administrators of the school, but also the culture of the students. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say fish rot from ahead. That is, any organization you go to, whether frankly it's in schools or state sector or the private sector, if there's a real problem in the business, almost inevitably it's about the leadership, from the chair down to the CEO, down to the senior leadership team. And you'll never fix the business unless you don't get those leadership right. And I say I've been into about 20 different businesses, pretty well all of them turnarounds, and it's all about culture. It's all about setting the right culture, because most people really want to do a good job. I mean, they really do want to do it, and they're depressed with being part of an organization that doesn't work. And when they have leadership that are doing stupid things that are often in their own self-interest, but not an interest in the organization, you need someone to come in and genuinely say, it's all about the kids. This is what we're going to do. Ship in or ship out. If you don't like that stuff, please move on. So you normally have to change the leadership, change the chair, change the head, maybe change 5 or 10% of the senior leadership team. And then after a period of time, people figure it out. It's about the pupils. We're doing this for the people. And it changes the culture. And it's magical. It is absolutely magical. You suddenly find people down in an organization making the right decision. And part of the culture is a no-blame culture. So when things go wrong, when you try something that doesn't work, don't worry. Face reality, do something different. So this whole sense of of a culture where people can try things. And if it fails, don't worry. You ain't going to be fired. If you fire them, no one tries anything different. And you just go, which isn't working. So that's, for me, the essence of what we do. And the only thing I can do is the chair.
I mean, I think that's a really, really interesting bit of insight. Obviously, as commercial people, we recognize that,
we've frozen.
Oh, are you back? Sorry, I don't know where we got. I was saying that in the commercial, in our commercial, I'm still commercial. Failure is not just tolerated, you're expected. If you're not actually trying stuff and failing, you're really not trying to do anything at all. I don't know what the ratio would be depending on what you're doing in the startup. Maybe you expect 9 out of 10 things. You only need 1 to succeed, and you're on your rocket. That bringing that kind of culture expectation to schools is really interesting. Trying stuff and failing and not being afraid of it, and no blame culture. I think it is really.
Well, it was the big change I found when I went from the private sector, where I'd done okay, into Ofsted, which is just, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I just couldn't believe I was dealing with a whole lot of people who fundamentally were good people, but the culture was just one way, one mistake, and you were sort of out with a chief inspector who didn't tolerate failure. Now that it doesn't work, you don't learn, and no one takes the risks. And you build up the old routine, which has failed. So if you don't have this culture of allowing people to make decisions and then face reality, that a lot of this stuff is, give it a go, it doesn't work. Face the reality, don't go on doing it. And it's so different to the culture of the civil servant. If they make a mistake, they lose their job, and if they lose their job, they lose their pension. And if they lose their pension, there's nothing else for them to do. They normally can't go into the project. They don't have any skills of this. So that's a very, very big problem, that they've got to begin to trust you, that they can actually stick their necks out a bit. And every so often they'll make a mistake. And that's a very, very difficult to get through, because, I come in as a businessman naturally and not trusted. So when you say, look, feel free to make a mistake and all's fine, they go, oh, you joking? The last time I did that, I got fired. So I think that cultural divide between the private sector, where it's all about trial and failure and success, to the state sector, where it's all about the status quo. And it's why, I look back in time in the Thatcher generation, where she made a massive difference to the culture in the state sector, in the private sector, but she made no progress in fixing the state sector. And now, my view is we've got a massive problem in the state sector because of the culture of the leadership and the reward, and actually much less of a problem in the private sector, except obviously, we didn't fit Europe, and therefore, this is causing massive problems. But a cultural, I think, is, in my view, the only thing I could bring.
Yeah. Well, I know when you were at Ofsted, your whole thing was to change its whole kind of culture from being an organization which is all about, punishment, to one which is all about, how do we embrace and encourage success? Because obviously you found it very challenging, didn't you?
We should change from being the critic to the friend.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It would be great if more of that happened, didn't it? Actually, one thing I just wanted to touch on with you was, when I talked to you before, you've always been incredibly positive about your head, under your head. As a CEO, as a chair, what makes a great head? Why are your heads so fantastic? What is it that makes them such a? What do you look for when you interview them, or when you're recruiting them, or what do you look for when you're getting rid of because they're not doing a good job? What is it that makes them fail? You need to change.
I think leadership, what leaders need is they need their heart and their head. They need both. You need an alignment of heart and head. So the CEO that I fired at Heart Academies Trust, she was all about herself. And she tried to improve the schools by selecting children in and selecting children out. And I didn't like that. That set a culture that was completely wrong. So you've got to have a combination of wanting to do the right thing. There are groups of people you genuinely want to help others. And then they've got to be clever enough to be able to do it. So I would say, I put in, I think he was 37 at the time, a young head who was the deputy head into our secondary school. And most people said to me, "That's ridiculous. He's too young. He teaches sport. He didn't go to Oxford and Cambridge. He didn't study PPE." To be honest, I couldn't care less about any of those things. The guy is a leader, and he's young, and he wakes up at 6 in the morning, goes for a run. He links very well with his students. He's prepared to listen and learn. And we put him in, and he has been outstandingly good. And we've grown the school from, I can't remember, 1,200. It'll soon be 1,800. 10 class entries at 300 a year right now. We're 2 times oversubscribed. So you've got to be both. And he wouldn't pretend to be a great intellect, but he's terrific. And to be honest, we've given him a lot of support. And he's learned a lot. And he's now, 42 or something. And he's now a really massively experienced head. And the main thing we've got to do is make sure we look after him so he doesn't leave us.
Yeah. And how's he, mentorship is really important, particularly for these young heads, right? Because they don't have a lot of experience. They might have all the right energy, all the right capability, but they don't have the experience. So how have you managed that? Has he had a mentor, or have you?
Well, it's one of the problems we've got in our small academy group. We've only got one secondary. So one of the things that you're desperate to do is bring another secondary in so that we at least have 2 people working together. But we have given him leadership training. He's linked in with other schools, and really the CEO David and myself, are supporters and mentors. That's what the game is. We just changed one of our primary heads. Previous one wants to move on to be a CEO. That's fine. Congratulate him. Moved a pretty inexperienced, very clever lady, PhD, but really gets it. And we just took 2 of our other primary heads and said, "Look, please mentor them. Please spend a morning a week with her." And she's been brilliant. And she's really open-minded and looking to learn. And she's young and energetic. We've made mistakes, but so I think a lot of this is support. Now you're choosing the right people, and that's critical. And not everybody is terribly good at choosing the right people. But once you choose the right people, then you got to support them. Even good people fail if you don't help and support them. And I'm not a teacher. I'm not a head. I don't know. Frankly, I don't know how to do it. But there are people that do know how. And I do know about culture, and I do know about support. And I think if you think about me, I get it. I get it. I understand what we're doing, and I understand, how important it is, and how I'm dedicated to improving the life chances of the bottom third. And that really helps. That gives me currency, even though I'm not a teacher. They know that, and that's really helpful. The head is really important.
And so we talked a little bit about the people, the head, the team, the culture. We talked about one specific thing that you did, which was to ban mobile phone. And can you give any other insights to other leaders as to specific things that have made a difference, very specific initiatives that have made a difference or have an impact, or you think will have impact?
Yeah. I think interesting, almost the first conversation I had with Chris Geller was, "What can we do to help you?" And he said, "We need to ban mobile phones." I said, "Done." And he went, "Oh, David, we may lose all sorts of kids." And I said, "We'll underwrite that." And it's made a massive difference. I can't tell you. Kids talking in breaks. The other thing that Chris did so well, he's got something of the cultural side, which is the BA way. These are the rules. This is what we'll do for you. This is what you do for us. And we do that with parents as well. So we like parents to sign a contract which says, "Look, we want the kids here on time, properly dressed. These are the rules," so everybody understands it. And that sense of when it starts going wrong, what the steps are, because we don't want to just fire kids. They'll end up in jail. That's not the right. So I think it's these boundaries, and but teachers need support, and it can be tough, particularly when they come from the sort of environments that we're involved in. But every parent wants their children to do well. You've got to recognize that, even though sometimes you can question that. Every particular mum, and we are very immigrant-led. We're 85% English as an additional language. I tell you, they want to get on. And I would say setting proper expectations is absolutely. If you don't get low-level disruption out of the classroom, kids arrive in class not ready to learn, in which case the teachers can't teach them, and you got the road to hell. And the one thing the corporates can do is set that culture. Now, we have not gone nearly as far as some schools have done with silent corridors. I happen to be a particular thing. I don't like silent corridors. I think it is unnatural. But it does set a tone, and they do arrive in class ready to learn. I just think, for me, it just goes that one step too far for me.
It seems wrong, doesn't it? I mean, I it just seems wrong. I mean, that just it doesn't seem natural, But
I mean, very successful.
Quite different things to your work.
Yeah, and some very, very successful schools have done it, and I can see why they do it, because discipline is so important. But I just don't much like it. Anyway, we haven't done that, and our progress has been very good in GCSEs and A-levels. In the secondary, our outcomes aren't as good as we need them to be, and so we're now focusing on that. But this is quite a long-term project. I've been here 5 years. I normally reckon in the private sector, I could turn a business around in 3, reasonably. I mean, you make mistakes and whatever. But this is much longer term. This is, I'd say, 6, 7, 8 years to properly turn around school. Now, you could easily turn around school by kicking out, selecting only the best kids in and kicking all the bad ones out. And then your results look pretty good. But what happens to those kids that get kicked out? That's a serious problem. So we're all about building relationships in the community. And we made it clear that anything we learn, we'll share with every other school. So this isn't a competition of our school against others. This is about improving the life chances of kids in Bedford. And that had a massive effect. So people said, what, you mean you'll talk to other schools? Yeah. We'll share everything. And similarly, we want to learn from them. It's a completely different, we're doing this not just for Heart Academies Trust. We're doing this for the community, and that shines through, frankly.
Well, it certainly shines through from you, and talking about leadership, it all starts from the top, doesn't it? If you have that passion and and everybody buys into your passion, then that permeates through the whole organization, and hopefully it permeates right down to the children themselves. They believe that there are their future people care about, and that hopefully makes a difference to them.
Yeah, but we made mistakes. We didn't make it this year, but the previous year we allowed some people to go into A-level that shouldn't have gone into A-level because we cared. We thought that was the right thing to do, and guess what? We had a number of kids who had U grades, and we could, big mistake. We made a mistake. We're too generous-hearted, so we were a bit tougher this time. You now need a GCSE 7 to do maths and science, because if not, they're not going to get their A-levels, and getting a U at A-level ain't good.
I think that's really interesting, and a good segue into talking about EdTech, because I am a passionate believer in the power of EdTech to help children progress, and I know you want to believe, but you haven't seen the evidence yourself, right? So that's really interesting, isn't it? You want to believe, but you'd love it to be the case, but you haven't seen that. But talk about the A-level one. There's actually a company called Uplearn. Have you come across Uplearn?
I'm one of their first investors.
That's right. I
got introduced you to the CEO.
Maybe it was, yeah. So you did. So you did. They guarantee the A, don't they? So how is that? How's Uplearn? They're the EdTech company. You know very well. Have you applied that in your trust? I think you have. I mean, has it?
Yeah, I actually bought 40 students the Uplearn deal because I was pretty persuaded that 98% of everybody that does this gets their A or A star, and if not, I was going to get my 200 quid back as student. And that all seemed fine. And this was the very early days. Of the 40, not a single one got an A or an A star. And in fact, not a single one got to the end of the course. Because what we discovered is that the onboarding was incredibly important. It had to be linked in with the teachers, and it had to link in with the parents. And that was our first. And I contacted the chief executive, said, hey, so much for your 96%. I had 0% success. And I can't even claim my money back because they didn't get to the end of the course. This ain't working. Anyhow, they've completely changed so that onboarding now is a critical element with the teacher. So it's part of the class and the parents. And the success rate has dramatically improved. And I was really amazed. I called Bedford Academy and said to them, just want an update on Uplearn. And they said, they're bloody brilliant. That's key part of the lessons that teachers are linked in. And we've got money set aside to invest more. And we're really looking forward to Uplearn, who are moving from A-levels down into GCSEs. We're very excited about that. Now, that was, and that's why I think I originally introduced you saying, look, I don't know this, but as an experience.
I think it's a fantastic company. And we had a great chat with the founder. Very impressive young man. But going back to, you've been a bit of a disbeliever, or you haven't seen the evidence, but you have. I mean, you do now believe. Does that say to you, at least at the A-level stage, you believe that EdTech can be?
I absolutely do, and I'm desperate. That's why I've invested in half a dozen, 3 or 4 sort of EdTech tutoring businesses, but I constantly focus on what's good for my cohort of students, which is the bottom third. And Uplearn is one of the ones that, with some significant changes, it looks as though that might work. Historically, the thing that our students miss most of all is human interaction. So in the very early days, 80% of brain connectors happen by the age of 4. And that's not about school, that's about parents talking to their children. And the top 10% of kids have 10 times as many words spoken to them, and 95% of them are positive. And at the bottom 10%, they hear 1/10 the number of words, and 95% of them are negative. And that leads at the age of 4, the brain development completely different between the advantage and the disadvantage. And so the one thing many of our students need, they need human interaction. They may not have had completely irresponsible parents because they've got other problems. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They've got lots of other problems other than bringing up their kid. Plonk him in front of the television. So they need a lot of human interactions, and the hypothesis is that they've got to get those before they can take advantage of the tech. So one of the big things I'm on right now, and we're trying to work on it. I'm pretty convinced that social media is a massive problem for the under 16-year-olds. I mean, a massive problem. And so, I don't know what we can do from a government standpoint, but I'm working with our teams to see how we control social media, which is causing massive mental health barriers with our children, where they're comparing their inside insecurity with someone's outside, going to wonderful parties and doing great things. That's causing huge problems. And I think, much like eliminating telephones from schools, I think cutting out social media in a responsible way is good. So there's a bit of some of the technology that needs to be held back.
Yeah, I think what is quite clear now. I mean, like certainly in early teen, you see a lot more new mental health issues in young people than they used to. I think social media is clearly one of the contributors, isn't it? And so it's very interesting. I want to get your take on something new that we've launched. So I think I might have mentioned this to you the last time that we talked, but we've launched a new product for language learning, where we actually it's aimed at secondary, not at primary. Then it's which allows students to have virtual conversations with AI and avatars, but it feels like a real conversation, right? The technology is so good now that you feel like you're having a conversation with a real person. We've actually cloned the voices of social media influencers in language learning.
Yeah.
So they feel like they're having a conversation with a real person. I just wondered what your view is on that for that kind of application of AI for those really younger, 5, 10. Is it a bad thing or a good thing? Is it, we really want the parents to be having those conversations and be teaching them those words, but does a sort of a virtual AI character, does that fulfill that kind of experience, or does it detract from that experience? I mean, I guess we don't know yet, but what are your views?
No, I mean, the facts are they're not getting it. Let's try something different. But I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think it would be, and these sorts of things. One of the great advantages of just running a very small academy group is we can try all sorts of things. Let's give things a go, see what it looks like. But as an example, we're down here in the country and we've got lovely people, but they're not always interested in talking about some of the things I'm interested in. So I go on a podcast and I listen to Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell, and I honestly, after an hour, I almost feel as though I've been talking to them. And I've been talking to them at all. They've been, but I feel engaged. I know what they're doing. It's topic. I mean, I've sort of moved slightly into politics now, try to get some fundamental changes. So, no, I think it's a brilliant idea. I think that is one of the great values of AI.
Yeah, and of course, in our language, people are just having conversations about interesting things because they're learning a language. But of course, you can also have AI tutors. AI is becoming very effective at being a maths tutor or English tutor or a science tutor.
Yeah.
I think literally, I was having this conversation with David Hoare before you, which is the forgotten third can't afford private tutors.
Yeah,
they'll be left behind. If you're wealthy, you can pay to have somebody tutor your son or daughter. And so AI in this sense is a great level. I know that some of the big companies who have sort of invested or been real leaders in sort of like tutoring are really, really worried about it, because actually these AI tutors are getting so good, they're actually getting better than human tutors.
No, we've invested in 2 or 3 tutoring businesses. And what I found is that though I went in as an investor to try and help the forgotten third, the only people that were taking up the tutoring was the top third. And we eventually, one of the businesses, which went bankrupt, the entrepreneur, fantastic guy, took it to China, looked as though it was doing very well until the Chinese government banned making a profit on tutoring companies.
Right, isn't it?
I mean, because they said it's not fair. You're not level the playing.
It's not fair, but all it does is it puts that underground, doesn't it? I mean, those people don't start paying for it. They just start doing it without selling it.
That's exactly right. But what's so interesting is their view was that it wasn't good for the country because the privileged got even more privileged because they were spending money on tutoring, and they basically closed us down. But so I think it would be absolutely fantastic. And I've got a gorgeous grandson who, attention span is not great, but he's completely into technology. When he comes down here to the house of the country, everything has changed. He wants to do things with the mobile, with the iPad, and with the television and stuff. He's the classic one. He would love to be learning from AI with technology. So I think it could be incredibly helpful, but we've got to do it right. We've got to do it. And a bit like Uplearn, they had a brilliant idea, sort of it didn't work until they completely adjusted the way that they onboarded it. And so hopefully that'll work fine.
Well, you were talking about completion rates of the courses. I think one of the things that, we have seen over the years in EdTech is if you can get a child who goes through a digital course, right, usually it's at home. Usually it's the parents who's paid for this stuff, right?
Yeah.
If you can get them to sit down and do their, hour or two, it's really impactful. The software doesn't have to be amazing, but it's as much as having that child have the ability to stay committed, and that's the hard bit, isn't it? Most children, they don't. Parents invest in the children don't do it, boring, and then it have the impact.
Yeah,
and that's why
it is enormous, absolutely enormous. But I haven't yet. I still haven't found. I haven't yet sort of found anything that really. I mean, we'll see about Uplearn.
Well, that's why my passion is all about bringing games.
Do you even know it?
Yeah, like that. I'm 54 years old, and I'm 54 years old, and I still love playing games. So it works for everybody. That we've seen that across the world, just have that disproportionate impact on children from disadvantaged backgrounds. When you gamify that learning experience, suddenly it becomes fun, and people don't even realize they're being made to go to school and back. So for me, that's a really important part of what we do. And Duolingo, we're now doing other things in the language in that space. Duolingo's success is all because they gamified. They really they naturally pioneered it, Busuu pioneered it. They really took it to the next level. Everything was very game. That's the trick, because learning a language and vocabulary is arguably quite boring. But when you gamify it, it keeps you motivated. Streaks, rewards.
So I think it's terrific. I think we haven't seen the benefits yet, because what is becoming clear is the privilege of becoming more privileged and the less privileged becoming less privileged. So however hard we've tried to do things, the funding and the ideas and whatever tends to flow towards the privileged. And I feel as though the responsibility of government and my passion is to see if we could give the leveling up, the support for the ones that really need it, as opposed to take the most advantaged and make them even taller.
Well, I'm a big believer in technology. I'm even a bigger believer in the impact that AI is going to have. I agree. The ability for AI to be a virtual tutor is here today. Obviously, it will take several years for it to permeate the school system and to be delivered in the right way, because of course that is
I know it's a massive exciting times. My goodness, there is a massive demand here. I'm only really focused in the UK because that's sort of all I can. Well, I'm sort of focused in Bedford right now, and then I hope the R's, because it's small enough that I'm into the dirty detail here in terms of children's learning, and I'm hoping ours is like a petri dish, a sort of where we can try things and then expand them out to others, including how do you take schools in a deeply deprived areas and make them successful, and make the community more vibrant. So I think as I mentioned to you, we're keen to work with organizations like yours to trial things. Although because our job is so hard, our resources are very stretched, and I don't just mean money. I mean,
one of the biggest challenges, of course, is teachers are asked to do so many initiatives. They don't want another initiative, do they? They're fighting fires and they're trying to do so much already. So this call is not a sales pitch. This is just us trying to try and impart some of the wisdom of your knowledge in particular onto other things. So actually, let's return to that. So let's start with other chairmen. Right? What would be your 3 top tips to other chairmen? Maybe you're a new chairman in a trust, or you've been in a trust as a chairman for a while. What would be your 3 top tips to these people to be effective in that role?
Well, the most important thing, 1, 2, and 3, is get the right CEO. The relationship between the chair and the CEO is utterly, utterly critical, and there's got to be complete. you got to trust and respect each other. And I've been involved in a number of businesses where the majority it's been fine. Either whether I was the chief executive with the chairman or I've been chairman with the chief executive. And it becomes pretty bloody obvious whether you're going to be able to get on enough between each other. There needs to be complete trust and not competition. And I would say that is, the most important thing. You've got to get on. But you have to have an environment, where you have an organization who's prepared to, deliver change. And I'd say with Ofsted, with my shareholder essentially being the government, and the civil servant, they really weren't prepared to. It was an organization that was very, very difficult to turn around. And then, my relationship with the CEO was not perfect, and that makes it very, very difficult. So you need an organization that's willing to change, i.e., like a shareholder or the person you report to who genuinely wants to change and is prepared to provide a leadership to you as the chair to work with the CEO to face realities and try to do things. So I'd say one, the relationship with the CEO. The CEO you've got to face realities. So often, most of the companies I've ever been to, they just haven't faced reality. And the great advantage of being an outsider coming in is you see it straight away. So I always used to say my great advantage is that, I could see that other things that other people couldn't see because they'd been there for too long. And then build the right culture. Build the right culture. And I found it hugely fulfilling. Frustrating, because in the schooling business, we've had real fees per pupil reduced over the last 14 years of the Conservative government. I mean, it's a hell of a strategy, isn't it? We're going to reduce the amount of spending in the most important area of our country, and then they wonder why productivity is low. I mean, it's just, but it's very difficult to talk to government about it.
So, I wonder about advice to CEOs. Really the first bit of advice with your relationship with your chair is the most important relationship. And then probably I'm just guessing the next bit of advice is your relationship with your heads is the next most important.
Yeah, and it's in our particular example, I didn't particularly want an education as the CEO. Now, that's quite controversial because obviously they don't have that natural credibility of being a brilliant head. But I wanted sort of someone above that who wasn't challenging the heads in that sort of way, but there would be, because they're responsible for, finance and the buildings and the HR. They're responsible for a whole range marketing. And the relationship with the heads is really important. And we started off, the previous set chair had fired 3 of the primary heads. And I brought 2 of those primary heads back, fired the CEO and brought the heads back. Now, as you can imagine, the levels of trust, you've got to build that level of trust. So as an example, we invited all our heads to every board meeting. Now, after about a year, they realized it was a waste of time to go to the board meeting. They had lots of better things to do. But I needed to show them there was nothing untoward going on in the board meeting, where a year ago they'd been fired. So building the trust between the CEO and the heads and helping the heads. During the pandemic, we made massive progress because we used to do all the dreadful things you have to do, and to leave the heads the responsibility for education. We did all the building stuff. We did all the safety stuff. We did all the security stuff. We did all the food. We took all that stuff away from them, all the finance, to let them focus on the things they were really good at. And in many heads are worried about academic groups because they think it'll take away their autonomy. In fact, it increases their autonomy in the area they're most interested in, which is education. And our best salespeople now, as we're trying to expand the number of schools, is our heads, who go to other heads and said, you think your authority and your leadership is going to be challenged. Just the opposite. All this stuff which you don't know anything about is done for you. And we can now focus on
recruiting the right teachers, training them properly, mentoring them, etc.
And we've talked in the past about there's a critical mass, isn't there? And so you've got a certain number of your trust. It's quite hard to be financially viable. So what are those kind of metrics and are they well known? Is it if you're a trust with 3 schools, do you know you're up against it and you've got to find other schools to join?
Yeah. Government is yet. I'm desperately trying to get government to face the reality. There are a large number of academy groups, which single academies and groups that don't make any economic sense. We've got just under 4,000 kids in 3 schools, and we at one level run a technical deficit. If you can't, I can't have £1 million headquarters with a CEO and a finance director and a head of education and facilities and catering. So I need 5,000 or 6,000 kids. I need another couple of schools. But that's from a financial standpoint. But actually, most importantly, from a professional development standpoint, I need another secondary so that Chris Della can link in with a really good secondary head that's not just a sort of friend down the road, that's actually in the same, what I call the golden thread with leadership. So, but government have just, in the early days, government just got some of these groups, they made them enormous. The largest group has got, I think, 68 schools scattered all the way around the country. We're concentrated in Bedford, and we found it very, very difficult to get any help from government about the strategic view. And many of these single academies, poor things, they're all on their own, reporting to nobody.
I've just been reminded of something from what I spent my early career as a software engineer, and I think it was probably in a book called The Mythical Man Month that it talks about this thing, which is in a team of software developers, everybody rises to the level of the best software developer in the team. So if you have, assuming they want to, but if you've got if you can just get one really good software developer into your team, everybody ultimately rises to that level. Do you think the same is true where it's sort of heads?
Absolutely, because some of the heads, get stuck in their way, have done well, slightly stuck in their way, do things the same way. And to have David Hoare come along and say, I don't think that's right, it's just, there's no credibility at all. They said, well, show me your teaching credentials. Well, I got none. But you get another head who, it's simple things like, I like my CEO to write me a weekly update, blank sheet of paper. What are the things? What are the issues? What's going well? What's going badly? How can I help you? I like that on a weekly basis. So I say to my CEO, look, I think you'd benefit from a weekly update from each of your heads. Well, the young modern ones think, yeah, that's a really good idea. It really helps me clear my mind on a Friday as to what the critical things are for next week and so forth. But the really experienced head just don't have the time to do it. So you need one of the heads to do it and to tell the most experienced heads, God, it's really helpful. Or, you get them all doing it. But also in teaching practice, we've got one school that's done a brilliant job in maths, and the other 2 didn't do as well. So all you need is to put them together. Yeah, how is it you're doing so well in maths? Oh, well, we do this. Do you really? Well, that's it. So in a really supportive environment, it's not saying you're bad, change, or else. Meet Judith. She's brilliant. This is what she does. Just see whether there's anything she does you could learn from. And
it's so fascinating, isn't it? Yeah.
So I think you're exactly right, and I think critical levels. I think we need at least 2 primaries. 2 secondaries, and I think we may need 1 or 2 more primaries. So if we had 2 secondaries and 5 primaries, we'd be sustainable as long as it was within a 20-minute radius, so that they were local. Because a lot is professional development. Each of them talking to each other. We know what the local environment is. We know what the local gangs are like. We know the politicians and the civil servants and the local authorities and so forth. So I think it's absolutely right. And I think the Academy program, started by the Labour Party in 1997, has been a massive success, step one. and the Conservatives just haven't properly consolidated. And I'm hoping with Bridget Phillipson that we'll move to the next stage of consolidation so that every Heart Academy Trust is of a scale, both from a financial and also from a professional development.
Do you think trust can ever be too big? I think United is the biggest trust in the UK now. I think it's up to about 100 schools now. Is that too big?
Yeah. But I won't make the names, but I close contact with the chairman of one particular academy group that's got 68 schools. And their view, my view is as long as you do it regionally, you can benefit. And then their perspective, and they may be right, that with their power, with their economic power, they can invest in developing intellectual property. They, with their 50 primaries, can look and see how you improve maths in year 2 and come up with some really evidence-driven initiatives. So I think potentially, as long as they are not scattered all around the country, if that makes that sense, but as long as they are pod by pod, there are the equivalent of those 5,000 kids in one region with teachers, I think they potentially could be the real innovators because they've got financial resources. I'm actually running a structural deficit, and I'm lucky that I've got and I'm spending some. But I don't like running a structural deficit. I need my 5,000 kids, but I'm not going to not invest because it's cheating this current generation. So I think large multi-academy trusts, if you look at art, for instance, they've done a lot. They're hiring all sorts of interesting people to do all sorts of interesting things. So I think it can be done, but scale on its own, we need real innovation. It's very intelligent centers, experienced who can develop the right program.
Your voice is getting a little quiet now, David. It's all fine for the first. Anything comes. So that's better now. That's better now. Yeah. Yeah. So we should draw this to a close. Have you got any parting words of wisdom on all stuff we've discussed? Anything else you'd like to impart on the audience? Hopefully the audience for this video is school and trust leaders across the country. Anything else you'd like to? You think they benefit wisdom of your experience? Oh, you've gone quiet again.
But I think, from my standpoint, it is the most important silver bullet we've got is early years. That is, if you don't solve the problem in early years, the teachers at the age, for kids age 4, it's bloody difficult. So the early years is the development of early years so that we have a good level of development for kids starting at age 4. And I'm working quite hard with a number of people in the early years area. It is absolutely critical. I then say number 2 priority is leadership in schools. On the things you talked about is absolutely critical. With a focus on pupils, what's good for the pupil is really a culture, which is, if ever decisions need to be made, is it good or bad, particularly for the bottom third. And the third thing is that I think that's true. Higher education has had all focus, where we really a lot of that effort. We have asked for further education and pressures. I think the idea of 50% of people going to university doing, is for everybody.
I think we need to completely rethink higher education because actually of AI. For example, I don't think we're going to need any software developers in 3 years' time. AI is getting so good at writing software. All the software developers are going to be out of a job. It's a crazy thought, isn't it? And we'll see whether that is true. But, higher education, I think, is going to have to completely reinvent itself around a future where AI makes certain occupations almost redundant.
Yeah, no, I think that's so. Really, from 10 years ago when I went to Gloucester, I said early years is further education. And to be honest, nothing's really changed very. I think there's a great appreciation of early years. The great guy called Ian Armitage, who worked with University Gillespie, in 4 squares, focused on early years.
fantastic stuff. But my goodness, it's hard work because it's a long-term investment to put money into earliness, and it doesn't limit the political cycle. Early, it's so we have 4-year-old because they're kids. I think in school the thing tips on that and making the job of teaching easy. I mean, retention studies, recruitment studies, that's jobs. It's the really job in the world. So that's the second, and then as you say, thinking about how to contribute. And I'm with the Labour Party. I reading about.
Well, look, David, thank you so much for spending some time talking to us today. I mean, we're incredibly fortunate that somebody of your great experience has is giving back, and even at with all the things you've done, you're still passionate about making a difference, and turning up every day and trying to support those children in your trust. So, on behalf of them, thank you, and on behalf of the whole community, thank you for being such a passionate believer that change can happen.
I'm sorry I've been a bit late on this.
No problem at all. It's been really great, and hopefully your words of wisdom will be very useful for the community. So thank you again.
Love to see you.
All right, bye for now.
All right.